going live with that. Okay, should be working. We got 4 people in there. All right, welcome everybody. We're just waiting for our guests to figure out some technical difficulties, but they'll be with us shortly. And here we go. All right.
Hey, Henry.
Hey, good morning, Jonathan. Good morning, Blake.
Good morning. Thank you for joining us.
No problem. Thanks for having us. My colleagues should be joining me soon. We were in the Google Meet room, so they'll hop on any minute now.
Not a problem.
Well, we're glad you made it. We have students who are super excited. So to our students who have already joined us, we just appreciate your patience and hang tight. We will get started soon.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Good
morning. Blake, real quick before we just get started, would you like to give sharing capabilities to Henry or
Yeah, Jonathan, if you can give it to me, I'll run our presentation from my end.
Yep, all participants should be able to share their screen already. So if you want to go ahead and give that a test out before we get started, you're more than welcome to.
Did that work?
Yep, it did. Beautiful.
Great.
Awesome. All right, looks like we have everybody. So I just want to quickly just say good morning to everybody watching, and a big happy Friday to both our viewers and our guests here today. I kind of, I'm excited. It's engineering week, and we really appreciate you all joining us today and sharing this awesome information. And on our first ever live stream as well, which is really exciting. I just kind of want to hand it over to you guys as quickly as possible. But first, Jonathan, do you have any announcements you'd like to make?
I do have one quick announcement, but just to kind of echo what Blake said, thank you for being here. We really appreciate it. And then what a great segue or a chance for me to announce our career fair coming up. So we have our career fair coming up. It's our 4th annual career fair, and it's March 20th through the 21st. So we'll definitely put some links in the description, and we'll also continue to link it in the weekly updates, the weekly buzz. So be on the lookout for that. So, all right, I'm super excited. I say we just kind of hand it off to Henry and his team. Blake, what do you say?
I would love to. Yeah, please, by all means, take it away.
All right.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Jonathan. Thanks, Blake. And thanks a lot, Yosemite Valley Charter School, for allowing my colleagues and I to meet with you guys today and just share a little bit about civil engineering. So as Jonathan mentioned earlier, this week is what we call E-Week, which is Engineering Week. And it's really an opportunity for us to share with the general public and students and just people that aren't familiar with engineering, what engineering is all about. And today we want to focus on really a few different topics related to civil engineering. So we want to tell you what it is, because a lot of people don't really know what civil engineering is about. So we're going to spend some time explaining what it includes, and you'll probably be surprised at how much falls under the umbrella of civil engineering. Then we're going to talk about how do you become a civil engineer? What education do you need to receive? What classes do you need to take? And then we're going to talk about what civil engineers are and what type of projects we work on, what type of jobs you can get. and how much you'll even get paid if you become a civil engineer. And then and so after each topic, we can stop for some questions, just so that people can ask your questions while your questions are fresh in your mind. And then we'll also have a final Q&A at the end. So we definitely want to be available to answer questions. So we're going to start with some brief introductions about my two colleagues and myself. So my name is Henry Leong. I'm a principal engineer for MKN Associates. We're a consulting engineer that specializes in water resources, and we have 8 offices throughout the state, and I am out of our Fresno office. But I was basically been in Fresno most of my entire career, and I've been practicing civil engineering for over 20 years now. Mahika?
Hi guys, my name is Mahika Ram. I apologize I'm not on camera. For some reason my webcam doesn't seem to be working, but regardless, I'm really excited to be here today. I recently joined MKN at the end of 2023, but I am about 5 to 6 years into my career as a water engineer. I'm a San Jose native, was born and raised here, graduated from high school here, and I moved to Atlanta, Georgia to attend college at Georgia Tech, after which I worked for a large civil engineering company for about 5 years, and really excited to start my water engineering career here in California.
Thank you, Mahika. Hello, everyone. My name is Amar. I have been with MKN Associates as an assistant engineer since I graduated from Fresno State. In fall of 2020, I started with MKN right after in January of 2021. So I've been there for a little over 3 years. I did something different in school, not water engineering. I did civil and transportation, but I've always had interest in water, and I wanted to give it a shot, and I've just been falling in love with it ever since. It's been a great experience at MKN, and I'm very excited to keep serving the Valley here. Hand it over to you, Mahika.
All right, so just to start kind of broadly, we want to ask ourselves, what is civil engineering? So what you're seeing on screen here are the 4 major branches of civil engineering. But overall, civil engineering is an engineering discipline that focuses on creating, improving, and protecting the environment in which we live. So that's both the built environment and the natural environment. And this includes things like roads and railways and airports, bridges, harbors, dams, power plants, and of course, water infrastructure. And so one thing to note is that civil engineers work very, very closely with other engineering disciplines like mechanical engineers and electrical engineers and geotechnical engineers in order to accomplish the work that we do.
Thank you, Mahika. I wanted to talk a little bit about how do you become a civil engineer. First, we're going to say that this is a bachelor's degree requirement for this field of engineering. A lot of people also go for their master's right away, right after school. It's also doable. It helps you with even starting your career with a little more than entry level. But a bachelor's degree is all you need. Also, you can start at a community college. So if a community college offers engineering or pre-engineering program, you could totally start there. If it helps you save on money, if you're not quite sure what exactly you want to do yet, and you have civil engineering in mind, this is a great way to start. I did that. I started at a community college, and then I transferred to Fresno State. Second step, and which you could also do during the last 2 years of school, and I did it during my last year of schooling, which is obtaining an fundamentals of engineering or engineering training certificate. This is a way of telling employers when you're ready to get a job or a scholarship that you're on the right path. You're showing them that you are actually working towards your licensure as a professional engineer. This also helps with entry-level positions. People pay a little more for people who have an EIT right out of school versus people who don't have it. Again, just because you chose initiative, it shows that you're on the right track. This is an 8-hour exam. It's cumulative of all the things you've learned in school. Even if you take it last year or year and a half of school, you don't have to have all the classes completed because passing rate is somewhere probably between 60 to 75%. It's not published, but this is what most people, like, even if they miss like probably 30%, they would still pass this test. So you don't have to have everything figured out. The last step in the civil engineer licensure is the PE, which is the professional engineering license, which is something that you have to have at least 2 years of real world experience to actually apply and get tested for. This is what they also call the stamp. So if an civil engineer have their stamp, that means they can authorize their own design plans. So you have more responsibility, right? If something is off, they will go back to you and ask you. You're responsible for your calcs, for your standards, and anything that you put on those plans. This is also important that it opens like doors for you in your career. A lot of roles that, like the higher up roles, for example, managerial positions, things that require like multiple years of experience, they would also require a PE license. This is another 3 steps testing. I'm not going to go into the details of this one, but this is the last step of your of becoming a licensed civil engineer. I also wanted to talk a little bit about planning your school and then planning your what we call a roadmap. This will help you avoid staying in school for longer than you need. Also, it saves you money because it's saving you time. Also, we're going to talk a little bit about a checklist, which is an exact list of the classes that you should take and that you should have already, that you always should have planned maybe 2 to 3 semesters, sometimes even all 4 semesters in advance. And if we go to the second slide, we can see here, this is what we call a roadmap in civil engineering, or I believe most majors should have something similar. This one will show you, as you can see in the legend, it says prerequisite and also co-requisite, meaning that all these solid lines, they are showing you what class have to be taken before you can take the next class. So for example, if you start up top left, math 75, this is a prerequisite for math 76, meaning you can't take 76 before taking 75, or you can't take them at the same time. It's a prerequisite, and so on and so forth. You could see there is a lot of LD is lower division courses, and then you can see to the right is the UD, which is the upper division courses. They're labeled like that, show you what's you're going to be taking during the first 2 semesters versus third, fourth semester of being at school. A lot of these LD courses is what you would take at a community college if you choose that route, versus if you start at a 4-year university right away. You can also see, for example, in the middle of that page, the CE 128 and CE 176 are a co-requisite. A lot of the co-requisites would be maybe a class and a lab. You could also, co-requisites could be taken before. So for example, you could see that CE 20 could be taken before CE 128 or at the same time. This on this page, you're not going to have to take every single class on this. This is a roadmap. There is like a certain classes that you will need to take. This is just to show you, if you decide to take a class, what's a prerequisite for it? Can I take it without taking this? Or can I take it while taking this? And also in civil engineering, there's like multiple disciplines that you can go to, which is what is all the colors. For the checklist, this is what we were saying that you should have planned in advance at least 2 semesters. So if you start your first year, you have your first semester, second semester figured out. Some people fill out the whole 8 semesters, which is 4 years of school. This will save you a lot of time. For example, if math 75 in your first semester closes, the class closes before you can take it, you need to figure out what to do next semester, right? Because it affects some of the classes that this is a prerequisite for. So this is very important. This is what you need to sit with your counselor for. You need to be using these resources that are free to you as a paying student. These are not things that the college is providing to you just because you paid for this. So technically you need to use all these resources that you have covered with your tuition. You meet with your counselors, and if a counselor you feel like you're not communicating right with them, you could definitely ask for another counselor. This is probably a little bit different than high school, but you need to be using all these resources that you paid for. Even if you have used grants or FAFSA, which is government aid, if you use scholarships, that all means that you have paid for these services. And this takes us to this next slide, which is how to pay for school. A lot of people use the grants, and which we call FAFSA or Cal Grant. They're two separate grants. You have to apply separately, which is free money from the government that you don't have to pay back. This is based on income. We're not going to go into specifics. Also, in your last year of high school, you should be able to have some workshops that will show you how to apply for these. Scholarships, which is technically also free money that you don't have to pay back. This is based on so many different things. It has so many different qualifications. Whichever school you're applying to will have a scholarships page, which is a page that directs you to all the scholarships that are available for your major that you're going to. If you don't apply for any of those, or you don't qualify for any of those, then you can go to the third option, which is loans, which is a special loan to go to school. Of course, the fourth option that's not here, which is paying out of pocket. And I'll hand it over to Henry.
All right, thanks, Amar. So Jonathan and Blake, that's the first topic that we wanted to discuss. Are there any questions that have been asked in the meantime?
There are, yeah, I have a couple if you guys would like to answer those. Our first question is from our YouTube chat. When did you discover that you wanted to be an engineer?
I discovered. Oh, go ahead, Henry.
Oh, so yeah, sorry. So I'll
first.
start, and then we can go down the list. So I decided to become a civil engineer in high school, and it was really seeing my older brothers and their pursuit of civil engineering, and also just seeing a neighbor family friend that was a civil engineer, and he always drove the cool car, and I would always admire what he was doing. He would get dressed up every day, look very professional, drive away, and get home at a reasonable time. And I was like, that looks like something I want to do. And sure enough, I started pursuing civil engineering in college and haven't looked back since.
Great, thank you, Henry. For me, it's kind of a similar story. I think I knew towards the end of maybe towards the end of high school, like my first year of community college, I knew I wanted to do this. For me, it's because of my background. My dad works in construction, so I've kind of always seen him like build things, and I kind of admired that. It made me look for a major in school where I could be on that right track, maybe still be helping, build things for the community, make a change, maybe even in like a small corner of the world, right? Especially in our like water engineering field. And although I kind of like math always, I was a math tutor throughout my college career for 3 to 4 years, and I think the love for math and then love for construction and seeing things built, I think it all led me to civil engineering. Mihika.
So I guess to give you a little bit of background, of course, I mentioned I did grow up in the Bay Area, and I come from a family of many sort of high-tech Silicon Valley engineers. My father is a hardware engineer that works on the most complex autonomous driving technologies. And so when I was growing up, my impression of engineering was a pretty complex physics, science, math-heavy, intangible concept to me. And it was sitting in my AP environmental science class during my junior year of high school, where I fell in love with the concept of water. We learned a lot about the impact of having access to clean, a safe and reliable source of clean drinking water, the impact that can have on communities, the economic growth that provides, and a lot of the ethnic and tribal and resource conflicts that occur in the world. Water sits at the nexus of so many of those issues. And so I became very passionate about learning more about water and kind of the impact that water can have on human life. And as I kind of further looked into water, I realized that environmental engineering was the field for me, which is kind of a subsect of civil engineering that would allow me to focus um, on building and designing and maintaining water infrastructure, whether it's expanding existing water infrastructure or building new infrastructure in places where they don't already have it. So I kind of fell in love with the concept of becoming a water engineer through understanding the impact of what water engineering means for people, both in our communities and across the world.
Blake, was there a second question?
Yes, awesome. Thank you all so much for answering that one. There was a follow-up question to that, and it was what skills do you feel are important to have?
That's a good question. I think we have some later slides that talk about it. So maybe we'll hold that question and we can make sure to answer it at the end if the slides don't cover it.
Sounds great.
Okay. Well, we're going to jump into our next topic, which is what does a civil engineering job look like? So one of the areas that you can find a civil engineering job is in the public sector. And what I mean by the public sector is it's a public agency like a city, a county, a state department like Caltrans, or the Department of Water Resources. It could also be an agency at the federal level like the Environmental Protection Agency, the United States Bureau of Reclamation, or the Army Corps of Engineers. There's also special districts, which would be similar to cities or counties, but they're not part of an actual municipality. And an example would be like Westlands Water District, which is the largest water district west of the Mississippi River. And you can also pursue careers as a regulator. You can work for the State Water Resources Control Board, the California Air Board, or the local San Joaquin Valley Air District. All of these public sector organizations have a variety of civil engineering job opportunities. And, they may range from being just a staff engineer or like a city engineer, county engineer, or you could be a director where you're directing the entire engineering group or the entire operations group. So, for example, if you're a public works director for a city like the city of Fresno, and you're basically responsible for all of the engineering work associated with the roads, associated with parks, and maybe even solid waste. Or if you're the public utilities director, then you're responsible for all of the water distribution system, the sewer collection system. You're responsible for ensuring that that city is able to provide those services. And then the same for the county. The county is more road focused, so there's more transportation emphasis if you work for the county, but it's the same responsibilities. And then if you work for the state and you work for a group like Department of Transportation, like Caltrans, then you're basically responsible for all of the highway, freeway infrastructure throughout the state, and you're figuring out when certain freeways need to be expanded. You're designing the infrastructure. You're designing on ramps and off ramps and overpasses, and then the same goes at the state level, on the water resources side, where at the state level there's an organization called the Department of Water Resources, and they're responsible for managing all of the water infrastructure throughout the state. So on the public sector, there are a very wide range of possibilities that are available if you want to pursue a public sector engineering job. Now, the private sector consists mainly of consulting engineering firms, and that's what I do. Mahika, Amar, and myself, we work for MKN Associates. We're a consulting engineering firm that focuses on water resources. So we're basically hired by the public sector to help them with their projects. So if there's projects that they are not able to do in-house because of its complexity or because they don't have enough resources, then they hire consulting engineering firms. And consulting engineering firms, They can range from firms that do land development work. So if you have a home builder that's trying to develop 100 acres in a certain location, then they would hire a land development firm to come in and help them plan that 100 acres, lay out the roads, lay out the utilities, and help them design all of the improvements that are needed, and also work with the city or county to get all the approvals and the permits that are needed to make that development a reality. There's also structural engineering firms. Structural engineering firms are really focused on designing not only building structures, but also bridge structures. So, structural engineers are designing schools, they're designing skyscrapers, they're designing bridge overpasses like the bridge structure over the San Joaquin River. They're designing the Golden Gate Bridge. So structural engineers are dealing with anything that's structural related. Now, water resources is really focused on making sure that that water and wastewater infrastructure is designed and planned properly. So our firm, MKN, we're designing water treatment plants, we're designing pipelines, pump stations, anything associated with making sure you can turn on your faucet and clean water comes out and you can flush your toilets and that wastewater has somewhere to go. We're involved in every aspect of that, which we're going to talk about on the next topic. There's also consulting engineering firms that focus on geotechnical engineering, which is looking at soils and the stability of soils. And there's also transportation engineers that are focused on designing roads and highways and planning how long does a traffic light need to stay green, or how long does it need to stay red? How long does a turn lane need to be so that the cars don't back up into the main roadway and end up causing traffic jams? So transportation engineers are focused on not only designing roads, but planning what the roads should look like. Now, on the private sector, there's also the opportunity to work for a private utility. So I talked about how cities and counties own and operate water and sewer systems, but some of the infrastructure throughout our state is owned by a private utility. So there's opportunities, there's basically the same engineering opportunities, but it would just be for a private utility instead. So now let's look at what a civil engineering career path looks like. So the start should always be as an intern. So if you're in college and you're in your sophomore, junior, senior years, you should really start pursuing an engineering internship. And the internships are usually just part-time because you're focused on school, so you're maybe working 10 to 20 hours a week. But it's something that engineering employers really value. So it's a really good way to be more attractive to your future employer when you're trying to find a job after graduating. And engineering internships typically pay about $20 to $25 an hour. Now, once you graduate, you would then be looking for a full-time position. And we consider an entry-level engineer what we call an assistant engineer or a staff engineer. And it's a full-time position. It's 40 hours a week. And, sometimes it's more if you're working overtime. It's very set schedule, typically Monday through Fridays, 8 to 5 or 9 to 6, whatever your regular work schedule is. But it's basically a set work schedule. And most assistant staff engineers, we would want that individual to work in person in the office. There's a very high premium placed on working in person and having that in-person interaction, especially in civil engineering. So we typically would expect that position to be in person. And an assistant engineer would typically work on project tasks that are supporting other engineers. So you're really going to be getting a taste of just small pieces of projects. And typically an assistant engineer will be at that level anywhere from 0 to 5 years. And the pay range for what I would consider Central California is 65,000 to 80,000 a year. So right when you graduate, that's the salary range you can expect to earn with a full-time position. So once you've worked for several years, the next step is to become an associate or project engineer. And it's basically all the same responsibilities as an assistant, but you're now leading certain aspects of projects, or you're leading and managing a small project completely on your own. And the biggest differentiator is associate project engineers have obtained their professional engineer license, which is something Amar talked about briefly earlier. So once you get your professional engineering license, you can then stamp and sign your own reports and design plans. So that's why you're now able to lead aspects of projects. And it's typically when you're in your 5 to 10 year range of your career. And project engineers or associate engineers are making, anywhere from $80,000 to $110,000 a year. Now, once you become more experienced and you have about 10 plus years of experience, that's when you would become either a senior engineer or a principal engineer. And senior engineers are really managing large projects. They're managing clients. They're also performing business development activities, which is basically the exercise of going out and winning work and bringing in work for your company. And senior engineers are earning about 110 to 160,000 a year. And then if you become a technical expert in a certain subject matter, then we would consider that a principal engineer, and the pay ranges are even higher. Now, if you pursue civil engineering, you also have the opportunity to become an officer or like a CEO of an engineering firm. And these executive type positions, you're at that point, you're then leading a big group or a big team of people, or you're leading an entire company. And the pay for a vice president or an officer would be over 200,000 a year. And all of the engineering professions are full-time positions that have full benefits. You're going to get great health care, you're going to get paid holidays, and you're going to get a decent amount of personal time off. So really the reasons why you would pursue civil engineering or any type of engineering profession is it's very high job security. Most of our work is for the public sector, and there's always going to be need for water. There's always going to be a need for roads. And because of that, we have very stable jobs. A lot of you have probably heard about how Google last year laid off 12,000 employees, and they've had announcements about laying off thousands more this year. And, everyone views the tech industry as a very interesting and desirable sector, but it's also very subject to layoffs. So civil engineering, you're not going to see that. It's very stable. Most people that pursue civil engineering, they're able to maintain a career in civil engineering for their entire lives. And related to that topic, what we do is really not replaceable by artificial intelligence. A lot of what we do requires in-person interactions. It requires a very sophisticated and advanced knowledge of engineering principles that we have to be able to apply. And a lot of what we do is not going to be replaceable by artificial intelligence. It's also something you can do right out of college. You can get your 4-year degree and start working full-time right away. And it does not require an additional 4 to 6 years of medical school or intern residency programs. It doesn't require another 3 to 4 years of law schools like what attorneys have to go through. You can get your degree from Fresno State or wherever it may be and start working and practicing as a professional engineer right off the bat. In general, civil engineers have very high job satisfaction. We have great work-life balance, and because of that, it's a profession that's usually we don't see very many people leaving civil engineering. If anything, we see people pursue degrees in biology or chemistry, and then we find that down the road they then want to enter civil engineering. So it's a profession that has high job satisfaction. We see a lot of people remain in civil engineering or go into civil engineering as a second career. So lastly, salaries. I know everyone's probably wanting to make sure you find a job that pays well. Civil engineering is very competitive. And here's a graph, data from the Bureau of Labor. And what we did was we just compiled a list of some of the more common professions or occupations. And you can see engineers, they are right in the middle and very competitive with a lot of the other sectors. So this is just a piece of information that's good to consider, you know, where you want to be. These numbers are the median or the mean annual salaries from 2022. So as you guys know, that's the average salary. And depending on where you work or who you work for, it's going to vary. But the point of this slide is to illustrate kind of where engineers compare with other professions. Okay, so that wraps up the second topic we wanted to cover. Blake and Jonathan, have there been any other questions that have been asked?
Yes, we actually have, excuse me, two questions. So I'll go ahead and I'll read the first one. It says, my son is only 10, but he makes things all the time out of cardboard or whatever materials he can find around the house. What type of engineering would it be to actually build things with his hands?
It's a great question. And I would say there's several aspects of engineering I think could be suitable. So civil engineers for sure, because one thing we didn't really talk about too much is construction management. And construction managers actually fall under civil engineering. And if you're very interested in the actual construction of infrastructure, then construction management could be a great career. So that's one opportunity. I would say mechanical engineering is also a very desirable area for somebody that's interested in building stuff. You know, a lot of people joke around that that mechanical engineers design the weapons that destroy what civil engineers design. So mechanical engineering is also very focused on building and constructing. So yeah, I would say civil and mechanical engineering would be good majors to pursue.
Okay, thank you. We actually had we had another question pop up. So and it involves pay. So there's two questions. The first one is, what type of engineering pays the most money? And then the other question is there a pay difference between public and private sectors?
Yeah, those are great questions. I would say the highest engineering discipline would be that's paid the highest is electrical engineering. The tech industry is very high paying. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, Google probably pays electrical engineers higher than what a civil engineer would be making right out of college. But there's also the job security aspect of electrical engineering. I would say within civil engineering, though, you know, we talked about water, structural, land development. Within civil engineering, I would say the highest would be water and structural. Those are the most niche aspects of civil engineering. And because of that, the water engineers and the structural engineers are kind of valued the most and paid the most. And let's see, was there another question, Jonathan?
So it had to do with the public versus the private.
That's right.
So is there a pay difference from someone wanting to work in the public sector versus the private sector?
Yeah, there is. So historically, the private sector has paid more from just the base salary standpoint. But the benefit of the public sector is that you have usually more holidays, and the retirement systems, whether it's through PERS or STIRS, are typically, more robust than what on the private sector you would be able to get through a 401k. So I would say from a base salary standpoint, private sector is definitely higher. And then from a retirement standpoint and a holiday standpoint, public sector would be more advantageous. And then one other kind of related comment to this question is that the opportunity for promotion on a public sector job is much more difficult. So in the private sector, that ladder that I kind of stepped through, assistant engineer, project engineer, all the way to senior principal engineer, that's a very natural progression that every consulting engineer is going to see in their careers. On the public sector, you may be brought in or hired at a level, but there's oftentimes very little room for growth unless there's a position that's available to be promoted to. So it's basically where, unless there's a promotion opportunity, it's much more difficult to get raises or advance in your career in the public sector.
I think that's all we have. The questions keep coming. What form of engineering codes things, or what type of engineer I think does coding, I think is the question. That's the other one that kind of popped up.
Did you say boating?
Coding.
Oh, coding.
Coding, yeah. What engineer or what type of engineering does or codes things, or I'm thinking of like computer coding.
Yeah.
I have no technical background, so I can only interpret it, but that was the question. What type of engineer uses codes or codes things?
Mahika, this is probably perfect for you.
I think the best answer to your question is probably going to be software engineers. So their job is primarily the development of code, working with project managers and working with their clients or whoever the end user is to design the code to fit fit the need. But one thing that I'll also mention is that all different types of engineering disciplines work with code and are working with things like AI and bringing all engineering disciplines into the 21st century, as it were. So I think there's definitely applications if you are interested in coding to specialize in coding for civil engineering applications or chemical or mechanical, whatever you might be interested in, if that's something of interest to you.
All right. So I think they just put in the chat. Yeah, they were referring to programming or computer coding. So sounds like I got it. So, all right. We'll just kind of move along. We'll pass the baton back to you, and then students, put those questions in the chat that you'll have for the next presentation coming up. So, go for it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jonathan. So we've kind of talked about what civil engineering is, how to get there, and what generally civil engineering looks like as a profession. But now, as kind of Henry touched on, if we were in a room, I'd ask for a show of hands. But I would love for y'all to think about who here has ever turned on a faucet and had a drink of water, or who here has ever used a toilet. I'm willing to bet 100% of you are going to raise your hand to say yes to both questions. And essentially, that's what I'm here to talk to you guys about. How does civil engineering fit into providing drinking water and wastewater services? So what you're seeing on the screen here is a pretty simple diagram of a water cycle that I'm willing to bet you guys have learned since probably your younger elementary school days. So Henry, if you could move to the next slide. This here it's a bit chaotic and busy, and we'll step through this, but this is an example of how engineering fits into the natural world and how in a typical urban water system, how engineering is used to work in tandem with the natural water cycle to provide us with clean drinking water and make sure that the wastewater that's produced has somewhere to go and we're protecting the environment when we discharge it. So Henry, could you move to the next slide? So the first thing we want to ask is, where does our drinking water come from? So primarily it's going to come from two sources. Generally speaking, those are your surface water. It's either surface water or groundwater. So surface water means things like your water comes from a river or a lake or a reservoir or a dam. And groundwater, of course, means that water is being pumped from underneath the ground. There are large volumes of water underground in what's called aquifers. So in the magenta oval that you're seeing on the screen, that's an example of precipitation falling onto um, obviously onto the earth. And dams are created to create artificial storage volumes for this drinking water. And in the green oval, you'll see an example of a pump that is conveying water from below the water table up to what's called a raw water pump station. So this is essentially a pump station where you're taking your raw or untreated water, whether it's from a surface water source or a groundwater source, and you're sending it through you're pumping it through a system of pipes to get to your next step of treatment, right? Which is treating the water. So water treatment plants look different depending on whether you are treating surface water or groundwater, but the overall goal of a water treatment plant, as you can imagine, is taking your raw water and cleaning it to the point where it's suitable for humans to drink. So this includes removing any contaminants that may exist in the water, and most importantly, disinfecting it to make sure that it's clean and safe for us to drink. And there are both federal and state regulations for the state of California that dictate how clean and what that water needs to look like. So, as we're stepping through the process, once water has been treated at the plant, it is pumped through a system of pipes that we call the distribution system to either directly to your home or to some sort of storage system. So a lot of times you may be driving around communities and see tall elevated storage tanks. And the purpose of that is to store water within communities so that if by any chance there was some sort of event at the water treatment plant where the plant wasn't able to produce clean drinking water, communities, whether it's an elevated storage tank or a ground storage tank, would still have a safe and reliable source of drinking water for 2 to 3 days. So the next thing we need to ask ourselves is, well, once we turn the faucet on and we consume the water, whether it's through showering or the food we eat or even just using the restroom, what happens to that water? Well, and then one caveat I'll mention to this is a diagram, and what we're talking about is typical urban water systems for larger communities. In a lot of smaller and more rural communities, these systems exist, but just kind of on a smaller scale. So with that being said, typically you'll have sewer systems which essentially collect all of your sewage, that's water from the drain of your shower, your toilets, and any other drain in your house. They're collected in a system of pipes called the conveyance system, and they are sent to the wastewater treatment plant. And so water treatment and wastewater treatment are very similar in ways in that the overall goal is to treat the influent water to a point to remove a lot of the excess nutrients and to disinfect the water. So with wastewater, we're taking really dirty water, essentially sewage, and we're removing all of the excess nutrients that may harm the environment, and we're disinfecting it for any bacteria that may cause human health concerns. And the next question we ask is, what do we do with all that treated wastewater? So there's a couple different things. As I mentioned, I lived on the East Coast for about 9 to 10 years. And so on the East Coast, it's very, very common for wastewater treatment plants to discharge their cleaned up water into surface water. So that might be lakes or rivers. And so naturally, you might assume that it's very, very important that engineers pay close attention to wastewater treatment to ensure that we're not putting anything dirty, we're not adding any harmful metals or contaminants to the two surface water supplies. And what you're seeing in yellow here are other options for dealing with wastewater. So many times in communities, wastewater may be discharged to evaporation ponds, where naturally that will play into the natural water cycle. Some communities may build very deep wells and inject that treated wastewater deep below the ground. Some industries are actually able to reuse wastewater so that they don't actually need to use clean drinking water, but they can use treated wastewater or recycled water for whatever their intended use might be. So for example, you'll see, Henry, could you go back a slide? Awesome, thank you. So you'll see this golf course here, and many golf courses actually use recycled water rather than clean drinking water to reduce the overall impact on the environment when they're using water for irrigating their lands. And so that's kind of the overall drinking water to wastewater treatment cycle. I also wanted to highlight one really cool drinking water technology that you may have heard about in the news called desalination. So as I imagine, we're all pretty familiar with the fact that California has had some pretty serious droughts over the last 10, 15 years. And as I mentioned, when I was in high school and considering what my career was going to be, there was a very, very intense drought. And so the engineering world and communities across the state and across the world are trying to figure out where we can source drinking water from when rivers are running dry, when there's not much rainfall, and when the water supply and groundwater is very low. So essentially, desalination is a very popular option, though it has some challenges with the power usage and with cost. Desalination is essentially a process where water can be pumped either from very saline underground aquifers or from the ocean itself and treated using very advanced treatment processes to the point where it's suitable for humans to drink. And so that's one area that is the home of a lot of innovation in the water industry. That's very exciting, and you'll probably see a lot more in the news. All right. So I kind of talked through all the different ways that engineering factors into the natural water cycle. So this is kind of a list of within water engineering, what different disciplines might look like. I focus on drinking water treatment and wastewater treatment. And I know Henry and Amar have kind of different specialties, but both within water engineering. And some people may choose to focus on only one and get very detailed with their knowledge and experience within one discipline, and other water engineers may choose to build a more general breadth of knowledge across more than one discipline within water engineering. Next up, thank you. So you guys also might be wondering, what does a day in the life of a water engineer look like? So what I've got on the screen are a couple different examples of what I do in my life as an engineer. So this diagram you're seeing on the right with all that red and some pumping and pipes, that's an example of how we actually accomplish our designs. Engineers will sketch in red and will work with drafters to actually have drawings, to come up with drawings that convey what our designs are to the client and to contractors that will build the work. Technical writing is also an important part of, I would say, any civil engineer's career. And I think there was a question about what an important skill is for engineers. And I would say that writing and communication are very important, although you might not typically associate that with hardcore engineers. Other things that I work on and deal with as part of my day-to-day career include cost estimation, project management and working with clients, construction management, of course, as Henry mentioned, infrastructure and water supply planning, that is helping utilities plan out what their needs might be over the next 5 to 10 to 15 years and helping them accomplish and build their systems to meet those demands. And another really helpful skill and thing that I deal with every day is data analysis and management, and specifically using Microsoft Excel.
So we actually have one or two more slides where we were going to talk about an example project, but I see that we're running up against time, and I want to make sure we're able to answer any questions that might be lingering out there. So we'll just open it up to Q&A right now, just to make sure we can get everyone's questions in.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. We did have one question, a couple questions in the chat. One was, are civil engineers the only engineers who work on water-related things?
Yeah, that's a good question. In terms of planning and designing water infrastructure, yes, but I know there are other engineers like environmental engineers or chemical engineers that also kind of cross over and may deal with water quality or water treatment. There's also mechanical engineers that will sometimes do civil engineering projects related to pipelines and pump stations, items that are more mechanical engineers would also get involved. But yeah, I would say if you're interested in water or water infrastructure, then civil engineering would be the way to go.
Awesome, thank you. We also had a few questions from students who were not able to attend today, but wanted to get a chance to ask, so when they watch back, they can get those answered. The first question was students who kind of dislike math kind of automatically think that they can't be an engineer. So they were wondering, what level of math do you do daily?
Amar, you want to field this question?
Yeah, I'll be happy to answer, or at least give some information on that. So I will start in schooling. Yes, you actually go to the higher classes in math in school, which is like including calc and probably like two different calculus classes. Uh, Now, going to the day to day, you're not going to be using a lot of these equations, right? On like in everyday practice in civil engineering. Some disciplines do, for example. So it's also depending on the discipline. So, for example, if you're structural, you're probably using more math equations than if you're working in water treatment, right? So it also depends on the field of civil engineering that you're in. But in school, yes. I wish I could have said no, but yes, when you're going through your 4 years bachelor's degree, you will actually have to hit those higher math classes.
Awesome, thank you. And kind of a follow-up to that. So, what advice would you be able to give a student who might struggle in math, but kind of really wants to build and create things to make the world a better place?
One recommendation would be to pursue a construction management route. Fresno State is a program that has in their engineering program, they have a construction management emphasis as well. So if you pursue that route, the amount of math you would need to do is not the same as if you were to pursue the traditional civil engineering. And I would say you would still be involved in the same types of projects that we've talked about and doing similar work, but you would just be more focused on managing construction projects instead of doing the planning and design of the projects.
Awesome. Wonderful. And their last question that they had was, what kind of technologies do you all use to assist in these types of areas and this type of line of work?
Mahika, do you want to field this one? You're probably using some pretty advanced stuff that would be fun to talk about.
Sure. So I think, as I mentioned, something day to day that uh, I would guess that most engineers deal with on a daily basis is data management and analysis. That might be a simple set of data where you've got just a bunch of dates and a bunch of parameters and you want to be able to quickly summarize. I think that's, while that's not a super complicated or novel technology, it's something that would benefit, I would almost say most people to get familiar with and get comfortable doing. I also work with hydraulic modeling software and process modeling software. So, for example, we're designing a desalination system in the Central Valley, and we're using some really chemistry intensive process modeling software to estimate what kind of performance objectives we can achieve. There are also examples in the water industry of using AI to help predict where failures in an infrastructure system might be, and helping to target the most important pipes or pumps to rehabilitate to make sure that the impact on communities is minimal. I'll let Amar and Henry add in if they work closely with any other technologies or they think they'll be relevant to what we do.
The only one I'll add is a lot of our design work is done with AutoCAD, which is a drafting, computerized, it's computer aided design software. That's what CAD is short for. but that's what we use to prepare the plans that we need for our construction projects. So doing CAD work is very valuable, and that in itself is kind of a separate profession, but also within civil engineering as well.
All right, thank you so much. I think that kind of wraps up a lot of the questions that we have here. So if you want to finish up your presentation, you could
Sure.
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, well, I just want to thank everyone again for sitting in with us for the last hour, hearing about engineering and celebrating National Engineering Week with us. We will be participating in the upcoming career fair that Jonathan talked about at the beginning. So if anyone has any follow-on questions, we'll be happy to answer them during that career fair. And we do a Kahoot game that's live and dynamic, and there will be prizes. So come to just win some prizes, even if you don't care about engineering.
Love it. And just a thank you in advance for showing up at that career fair. And I do want to reiterate to our viewers, emphasize that that is definitely a presentation that you do not want to miss. Like you said, at least for anything the Kahoot, but it's amazing information, a lot of fun. And again, thank you in advance for showing up at our 4th annual career fair. So yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for having us and attending.
Having us.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you. And for our viewers, just thank you so much for attending and checking out our first ever live stream here. We really appreciate all of your questions. And again, just to just echo again what Henry mentioned. If you do have any more questions, make sure you write them down, save them somewhere, so that way you can ask them at that career fair, which is March 20th and 21st. If you go to our website, which we'll put in the description, you'll be able to see all the speakers and times as well as their Zoom links. And if you can't wait that long, go ahead and do some research. Check out some of our old videos because we've been blessed with their appearance in past career fairs, so you can go check out some of those. Maybe brush up on some of those things so you're prepared for those Kahoot videos or questions. So thank you everybody so much again, and I hope everyone has a wonderful weekend.
Thank you.